Hi everyone, it's Rose Griffin here from ABA Speech. If you are new here, I am a board certified behavior analyst and a speech language pathologist and the creator of ABA Speech, www.abaspeech.org. I am really excited to come on here tonight and do this Facebook Live. And I've been trying to do these throughout the year about different topics. So if you've tuned in before, I've been talking about across the year, what are the different verbal operants? How do we work with students with challenging behavior? What are some strategies that we use? What are preference assessments? How to use different modified leisure activities in your therapy and things of that nature. So if you're just popping on, I am talking about some of the things that we've talked about so far this year. Tonight, what we're going to talk about are my top 5 strategies to use when I'm working with students who have more complex needs. So students who are pre-verbal, non-verbal, limited verbally, and students who are really struggling to develop a response form. If you're new to my page, let me know where you're tuning in from. I'm coming to you from Ohio. So I am a speech language pathologist and a board certified behavior analyst. I work in a public school system, and I also work in a clinic type setting. And then one day a week, I work on all things related to product development and the dissemination of information and webinars and all that good stuff. So thanks so much for joining me. Like or comment, let me know where you're tuning in from. So tonight what I wanted to talk about are the 5 tips and strategies that I use when I am working with students who have more complex needs. Just as a disclaimer, I am just giving this information for, people who are professionals and people who are working on communication. And so if you are struggling and you need a speech language pathologist, feel free to visit www.asha.org. Or if you need behavioral interventions, please visit www.bacb.com. And you can search by your geographic area to find somebody who would be located in your area. So tonight, anyway, on to the strategies. Okay, so when I'm working with students at this communication level, there are 5 things that I always do. I could go on and on about this topic, but I'm gonna try to, oh, hey there, Lori. I'm gonna try to keep it brief. So what I try to do, number 1, is I assess a student's ability to request. So a lot of the times where I think we get in trouble is speech language pathologists, if you are a speech language pathologist, or a board certified behavior analyst, is that not always do we assess manding. So as a speech therapist, the assessments that we typically use, that we're taught to use in graduate school, do not assess a student's ability to request, which is such a disservice to students because I have 3 students, 3 children of my own, and they're constantly requesting. So that's really where communication starts. So I would say, if you've heard me talk before, I really love this assessment called the VB MAP by Dr. Mark Sundberg, who is a PhD and a BCBA. But if you don't have that assessment and you just want to start at a starting point, I would assess, can a student request? If I have items out and the student wants them, can the student request those items? If I give the student a prompt, whether it's to point to a picture or their device or to use a sign, can the student request those items given prompting even? That's number 1. We want to make sure that we look at manding. We may have to, especially if we're in a clinical side, may have to give some type of standardized assessment. Or even in a public school, we may have to try to give some type of standardized assessment. If you're tuning in, welcome. I'm just talking about 5 tips and strategies I like to use when I'm starting to work with students who have more complex needs. So the first one is to assess manding. Can the student request things? I say manding because that's the verbal operant. We sometimes in the behavioral field call it manding, but it really means requesting. Can the student request something that they need? So that's number 1. That's our number 1 strategy. We want to note that. Can they or can't they? That's very, very important. Number 2, what I always try to do is determine a student's preferred items, activities, people, places. What types of things do they really enjoy? And actually before number 1, the precursor before number 1 is to actually just pair yourself, your materials, your environment, wherever you're seeing the student, pair that with reinforcement. You want the student to really enjoy being in your presence. So you don't want the student to sit down and you start going through labeling cards and things like that. I know that sometimes we feel pressured to get data on a data sheet, and I love data, so I'm all for that. But sometimes when I'm working with a student and they're new, I just say that I'm pairing with a student. I'm getting to know what the student likes, okay? Because that's number 2. Number 2 is determine what does the student really like. Does the student like certain activities? Does the student like certain items? And this is kind of where we get into that idea of, do I have certain things that the student enjoys? Is the student really limited in what they enjoy as far as reinforcement, as far as things that they'll engage with? If a student is really limited, then sometimes we do something called a preference assessment or reinforcement sampling. And we want to see what types of things can I get the student to engage with. And so if you have a student who's really impaired in that sense, and that's something that you may want to look at. But I think for every student, we ask our students, and I don't always ask my students out loud, but I may say rhetorically, asking, what are you into today? I always use the example of some days I like Dunkin' Donuts. That was today. Tomorrow, I'll probably get Starbucks. The thing is, we want to ask our students every day, what are you into today? Because motivation changes. Okay, so number 2 is determine what do they like. And then we need to be documenting all these things. Obviously, number 1 is assess the student's ability to request. Oftentimes, our speech therapy tests don't even look at that. So can the student request? And if they're requesting, how are they doing that? Are they dragging somebody to what they want? Those are all good things to note. Number 2, determine what types of things the student really likes, because that can be really hard. And if the student is really having a hard time, you can use something called a preference assessment. Okay, that's something that's very important. And asking the student, what are you into today? And you can tell that by a student's behavior. Our students that I'm talking about right now, tonight on this Facebook Live, are probably not going to be able to answer you like, hey, I want to work from Fruit Ninja today. Okay, that's not the type of student that I'm talking about right now. I'm talking about a student who really can't tell you those types of things. So we really have to observe their behavior. And that is really what's going to lead us to knowing what types of things that they enjoy. Okay, so number 3, when we're going through our strategies, is how is the student going to request? How is the student going to tell us things? What is their response form going to be? And this is such a comprehensive group dynamic team type of question, right? Are they going to use pictures? Are they going to use PECs? Are they going to use an AAC device? Is it going to be Proloquo? Is it going to be, something different, LAMP? All those different things that are out there, touch chat. How are we going to determine that? Do you have somebody in your district who's an AAC person or not? And there's different ways to assess that. Do you have to write a report so they can get a device? There's lots of different things that go into this. Is the student going to be somebody who uses sign language? If you're just tuning in, we're on strategy number 3. Number 1 is assess the student's ability to request. That's so very vital when we're working with students who are pre-verbal, non-verbal, limited verbally, people who are struggling to find a way to communicate with the world. That's who I'm talking about tonight. Number 2, determine what types of things they like. If you can't determine what they like, you might need to use something called a preference assessment. Number 3, which I was just going over, is a response form. Okay, determining as a team. And this is where it gets tricky because there's a lot that goes into that. How is a student going to request? And sometimes you have to try lots of different things. I have a student that I've worked with more recently where I thought, okay, this student's older, the student's going to use advice. I just know it. This is what's going to work. And then the student couldn't point. When we met the student's point was like this, so we couldn't activate any of the buttons. And so I worked with the OT and we co-treated and we shaped up a point, but then the student wasn't scanning. So my data, because I take a lot of data, my data was saying this is not going to work. We need something different. The student was verbalizing. So I thought, wow, why don't we use and imitating? So we started to use sign language and verbalization. So there's this whole package of things that we really need to work on with early learners to help them find their voice, to help them develop a way to communicate with the world effectively. And so for that student, we started using sign language. We started using sign language and verbalizations. And now that's how that student's communicating. But I wouldn't have done that if it wasn't a team approach. I was collaborating with my OT, my teacher, outside consultants. Oftentimes when we're working with students of this nature, there are large teams. And that's what I say a lot of the times too when I'm doing these trainings, is that I'll sit in meetings with 15 people. And that's nerve-wracking. That's nerve-wracking for me, and I know it's nerve-wracking for a lot of professionals. So number 3, what is the response form going to be? Let's try something based on how we're seeing the data, what the student is tending to communicate with, and we're going to take that response form, we're going to work on our requesting, and we're going to take data and we're going to analyze that data going forward. And you may have a situation like mine where we had a situation where I thought it was going to be AAC, a device, and the data was saying this isn't really going anywhere. It's not working for the student. And so we had to switch. And that was great. And that's been a great thing for the student. And people will tell me, oh, so-and-so is talking so much. They're learning so many words. And that's exciting. That's really exciting. Okay, number 4, strategy number 4 when I'm working with students who are struggling to find a way to communicate. Number 1, assess their ability to request. That's vital. Number 2, determine what their preferred items and activities are. That's so very important. And write all these things down. Number 3, determine a response form. How are we going to work on communication? Number 4, this is so vital, get everybody on board. Train the team. So we're saying the teams for these students could be one-on-one instructors. They could be registered behavioral therapists, depending on what type of work setting you're working on. It could be other speech therapists, right? A school therapist, an outside therapist, parents, getting everybody on board with what we're doing. So let's say we're working with a student who's limited in their communication. We say, okay, we determine what types of things they enjoy. We have a list of things that they're motivated by, we think each day, and we're gonna work on using sign language and verbalizations to request those things. And now what we're gonna do is we're gonna train the team on what is requesting. Why is it so important? Because it's going to open the door to communication. It's going to open the door to those other verbal operants that we've talked about earlier this year if you've tuned in. If you missed it, check out my YouTube. It's ABA Speech, okay? So we're going to check out those things. And that's so important, is to train the team. We want everybody on board, because this is where number 5, our most important strategy, is that we need to work on requesting. So with early learners, we need to work on manding, requesting. That really is going to help our students understand, I do something, I get something. I do something, I get something. Wow, I sign book, we read a book together. I sign music, and we listen to my favorite song, okay? And that's going to build that repertoire of thought of a student understanding, I communicate and it's reinforcing. And that's really where communication starts, okay? So those are our 5 strategies. And what's so important about number 5 and number 4 with training is that we need to have embedded language instruction, meaning that student is not just going to work on requesting when they're with the speech language pathologist. That student is going to work on requesting when they are with the paraprofessional, when they're with their teacher, when they're out and about on the playground, all those different parts of their day. They really need to have that embedded instruction, and they need to have all of us on board. And that's how we really help a student make progress. That's how it really happens, is that collaborative and effective systematic language instruction. That really helps learners. So if you're just tuning in, our 5 strategies that I wanted to go over are: when you're working with students and they're struggling to develop a response form, assess their ability to request. So important. Can they request? If they can't, we need to note that. How are they requesting? We need to note where they're at baseline. Number 2, determine their preferred items, activities, people that they enjoy. That's very, very important, because this is what we're going to work on requesting with, okay? Things that they love and things that they enjoy. Number 3, we need to determine, what is the student's response form going to be? Are they going to use sign or picture exchange or verbalizations, a little bit of both or all? We need to note all that and have that written down. Number 4, train the team. Get everybody on board, okay? I have a lot of really good videos on my YouTube channel, ABA Speech, that are free, and it's good content. And this year I've been doing these Facebook Lives all about these types of things. And I have a section all about I think it's called ABA Speech Live. So I have all these different tutorials. So definitely read that. And then work on requesting and making sure that it's embedded in the learner's day. That's so very important. so the student has many opportunities to practice and they understand that their communication is very powerful. So I wanted to come on here and tell you that those are my 5 strategies, when I'm working with students who are early learners, when I want to help them find their voice. I also wanted to let you know, if you're new here, I have a course that is very comprehensive that is all about helping students who are nonverbal or limited verbally increase their communication skills. If you are working with students who you're having trouble engaging with, or if you're working with students who are really struggling to develop a response form, a way to communicate with the world, despite all your efforts, all your wonderful efforts. I have done so much professional development in my 14 years in the field. I'm a speech language pathologist, a board certified behavior analyst, and I really specialize in and focus and am passionate about helping professionals provide systematic language instruction. And so I've created a course all about it. And so it's comprehensive. It's over 5 hours of content. And we talk about assessment. How do we work on assessment with these students? Because oftentimes what we're taught to use for assessment is not really giving us a good snapshot and not giving us a good scope and sequence of where do we go with our instruction? How do I plan intervention for a student who's maybe running around the room and I can't engage with? We talk about collaborative services. There's so many barriers to collaborative services, no matter if you're working in the public or private sector. And I talk about some of my strategies that I use to really get that team dynamic going, which is so very important for our students. We talk about the verbal operants. What is a man? What is a tact? What are intraverbals? All those different words demystified and explained, okay? Because they're kind of thrown around all the time in meetings. We're going to talk about what does systematic language instruction look for early learners? What does a session look like for students at this language level? What should I be working on? It can be overwhelming because it feels like there's so much to work on. I'm going to break all that down for you, and with videos and descriptions and pictures and illustrations so you can really transform your therapy that you're providing for students. I'm also going to talk about data. I love to take data, and it's important to analyze data, and data is hard. We're always modifying, tweaking. How do I get data on that? That's really hard. How do I take data in a group? How do I take data when I'm working on manding or requesting? And I'm going to talk about all those. So if you're just tuning in, I went over my 5 strategies when I'm working with students who are pre-verbal or struggling to find a way to communicate with the world. I have a course. If you press shop now here on my Facebook page, it will take you right to the course page. You can look over, there's over 5 hours of content all about those different areas. The course is going to be open just for a week and a half. If you live in the 48 contiguous United States and order the course by next Monday, you will also receive a free box of action builder cards. So if you're new here, my action builder cards I created because I couldn't find anything on the market that was teaching language in a systematic way like I was. Most of the action cards that are out there just have one example of an action, but my students really need me to help them plan for that generalization piece. So for example, with the word washing, I have a student washing hair. I have a student washing hands. I have a student washing dish. And so the back also has the different verbiage that you're going to teach your students, okay, when they're learning how to construct sentences or when they're learning how to identify actions. And so I wanted my students to know, hey, these all mean different actions. These all mean washing. Because what I was finding is I was teaching my students one example of an action and then having to get all these different Google image pictures, and so I wanted to put that all together in the action builder cards. So if you sign up for the course by Monday, next Monday, you will get a free set of action builder cards. I'm really excited about this product, and I'm really excited to get them out there into the world. A lot of people are using them and enjoying them. So if you press shop now, that will take you to all that information. You also get, if you're an individual user, you get a half-hour consult with myself. I think the most exciting thing is that you get lifetime access to the course. So if there's something that you go over in the course and then a couple months later you have a different kid and you think, oh, what was that one thing that we talked about in that one course with Rose? It's yours and you can watch it and use, there's lots of downloads, data sheets, preference assessments, all this wonderful information. I feel like I do a lot of webinars that are little bursts of information, and then sometimes I just don't think that's enough to really help you transform your therapy. And so I want to be here on that journey to help you provide systematic language instruction. So if you just joined us, my course, Help Me Find My Voice, is open now. The course is open. If you press shop now, you can get more information. There's over 5 hours of content. It is, I will give you a certificate at the end that you can use for maintenance hours through ASHA. So you can use that for those CMH hours. If you have questions about that, feel free to contact me at www.abaspeech.org. But through my FAQs on the course page, there's all that information there. I have a private Facebook page that's going to be for people who are just in the course, and I will go live on that course and talk about the different modules and post pictures of, you know, how am I implementing these strategies in therapy? Because this is what I really live and breathe every single day. I love talking about helping students at this language level really explode their language and communication and communicate with the world in such a different way. And I want to help you professionals provide systematic language instruction and make it easier, because I think there's so many barriers. I think oftentimes we go to a conference and we hear a 1-hour webinar and it sounds great and we implement a couple things and then it gets really hard to transform your therapy. So that's why I wanted to offer something that is a little bit more structured, has more information, and has all those different supports. So if you sign up for the course by Monday and you live in the 48 contiguous United States, you'll get a free set of action builder cards. For individual users, you'll get a 30-minute free consult with myself. And I also have group settings. So if you're working with a group of professionals, or if you have a classroom of professionals and you think you'd like to have the course, it's lifetime access, and I have different group pricing as well. So, and if you're a group, then we could do 1-hour consultation sometime to talk about applying the information, because I think that's really nice. That's how you make a change in your behavior as a professional, is you listen to information, you practice that information, and then you collaborate about how things are going. So I wanted to come on here tonight and tell you all that information. Please share this with other people, other professionals that you think might enjoy this. And if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to contact me at www.abaspeech.org. I am here to help you provide systematic language instruction with ease. Thanks so much for tuning in, and I hope that I will see you soon. Bye.